What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back, and as always, thank you for joining me. My name's Paul Brettel. Today we discuss the Packers' offense and their performance against the Detroit Lions on Thursday, specifically the passing game and how that element helped shoulder the workload in the second half of that game. But first, you know what to do. Hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I do greatly appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. Find all my work over at ESPNLacrosse.com, including the article version of what we're going to discuss here today, among many other topics. And for my Wisconsin sports radio fans, Packers, Brewers, Bucks, Badgers, whatever you might need, download the 105.5 ESPN Lacrosse app for your Wisconsin sports radio fix every day of the week. You can find me on Sports Lead Monday through Friday, 3 to 6, again, multiple days per week. So like I said, our focus is going to be on the Green Bay Packers passing game, which, unlike in recent weeks, was the one to really provide the spark, the juice for this offense, especially in that second half against the Detroit Lions, because in the previous games, coming out of the bye, it was a lot of Josh Jacobs, a lot of the Green Bay Packers run game, and it was I believe, the catalyst towards the offensive success that we had seen from the Green Bay Packers. I mean, against the 49ers, Jacobs carried the ball 26 times, totaled 106 rushing yards. Just a few days later against the Dolphins, he had 21 carries, had only 43 yards on the ground, but there's something to be said for the commitment to the run game. And Jacob still found a way to total over 100 yards in that game, thanks to a 49-yard catch and run on a check down. So that it's not a coincidence that during that stretch, that as Jacobs is finding success, as the run game is finding success, that the Packers are leaning heavily on him, on that element, that the Packers also, their situational football, third downs, red zone, greatly improved as well. And as we always talk about on here, there's never one reason behind any failure or any success in football. It's an incredibly nuanced game. It's one of the beautiful things of it. There's so much that goes into just having one play be successful. But I think we can certainly point to the run game and Jacobs and the Packers' usage of him in that element in these previous games as being the catalyst towards their success, improved play on third downs and in the red zone. It's not a coincidence that as all that's taking place with Jacobs in the run game, that we see the Packers' third down success go to nearly 50%, which over the course of the season would be among the league leaders in success rate. It's not a coincidence that as Jacobs in the run game gets going, we see the Packers go 8 for 10 in the red zone in their previous 3 games, which again, over the course of the season, would be among the best in football. I've talked about this on a few occasions in previous videos, so I'm not going to get into the weeds about the Jacobs in the run game and contributing to those factors, but I'll keep it really brief. In short, when you have a run game to lean on, when you can just hand the ball to Jacobs and it keeps you ahead of the sticks, it puts the offense in very advantageous situations, thus resulting in their effectiveness on third downs, their effectiveness in the red zone. I mean, take it from Tucker Kraft, don't take it from me. I think it was after the 49ers game, he said, when Jacobs is playing like that, when they have the run game that they can lean on, the entire playbook is open to them. When he's picking up, and again, it doesn't have to be 12, 15-yard runs every time. It can be 4, 5, 6-yard carries. When you're in a 2nd and 5 as an offense, entire playbook's open up to you. You could run it on 2nd and 5. You could throw it on 2nd and 5. You can utilize play action. You can throw it deep. You can throw it to the intermediate. You can throw it to the short. And what does that do for the defense? They're on their heels. They have to defend the entire field at that point. That spreads them out. There's more space to operate in. There's one-on-one matchups to exploit. There's a bit of hesitation, I'll say, for lack of a better term, because there's some deciphering that takes place. You know, is it a run? Is it a pass? What's coming, right? It's a very, very advantageous spot for the offense to be in. And again, a lot of that started with Jacobs and the run game success. However, against the Detroit Lions, credit to their interior defensive line, a shorthanded unit. Lions are dealing with injuries along the defensive front. They're dealing with injuries at the linebacker position, but that interior defensive line did a very, very good job, especially early, of generating push up the middle. And regardless of whether it's a pass play, regardless of whether it's a run play, for a defense, the best way to wreck anything that an offense is trying to do is with a quick push up the middle. And the Lions were often able to do that. But on the other side of this, there was also, you could tell the game plan from the Lions was, we are not going to let you get Josh Jacobs going, because they often loaded the box against Josh Jacobs, having extra defenders near the line of scrimmage to make it very, very difficult for him in the run game to get going. So the Packers wouldn't be able to lean on that element as heavily as they did in recent weeks. According to Next Gen Stats, Josh Jacobs carried the ball 18 times, 9 of those attempts were against the loaded heavy boxes, boxes with 8 or more defenders in them. So on the game, Jacobs would total just 66 yards, averaged only 3.7 yards per rush. And what I will say is, credit to Matt LaFleur and the offense for sticking with the run game even through that, right? Because we've seen in the past where it's tough sledding in the run game. The Packers get a bit one-dimensional, quite pass-heavy, and again, that takes away some of the unpredictability that your offense might have. And while in the second half of the Lions game, again, yes, they leaned more into the passing game. I wouldn't say that it was this one-dimensional, completely obvious, hey, we're passing every down. So even while it was tough going, I did think the Packers did a good job of at least maintaining some sort of balance between the run game and the passing game in that second half, which is always going to be an important element. While they have the ability to lean heavily on Jacobs, we'll get into it here, they show the ability, and we all know they have, to be able to lean on the passing game to provide that spark. You never want to get too far heavy in one direction or the other, because again, you want to maintain that balance, because that just makes things more difficult for the defense. Now, having said all that, contributing to those issues, again, you credit the Lions. Interior defensive line played well. They obviously wanted to take away Jacobs in the run game. Offensive line struggled, especially early on in this game. It was a rough showing for Josh Myers, who's had a pretty good season up to this point. Elton Jenkins didn't look like his old self, or his normal self, I should say, at left guard early on. Sean Ryan had his ups and downs as well, and missed some snaps with Kadeem Telford having to sub in. Well, he came out, I believe, for an injury, but just wasn't the same crisp offensive line performance that we had seen. So you factor that in. Nice job by the interior defensive line, offensive line struggling, heavy boxes. It's tough sledding for Josh Jacobs, right? We already talked about 9 of his 18 carries came against a heavy box, total just 66 yards. 48 of his 66 yards, according to Pro Football Focus, came after contact. I mean, he was getting hit early and often in this game around the line of scrimmage. So he made the most of what he could, made the most of the opportunities that were there in front of him. Again, forced 7 missed tackles, but he had just 1 rush at 10 plus yards. There wasn't that same, again, ability from the run game, from the offense to stay ahead of the sticks, to be in those advantageous situations. And like Matt LaFleur said afterwards, those were hard-earned yards that Jacobs, Manuel Wilson, Chris Brooks were fighting for in that running game against, again, an aggressive and physical defense. So with the run game struggling, Packers had no choice to a degree, right? The pendulum had to swing in the other direction towards the passing game. And credit to that unit, especially in that second half, even with a slow start, they were able to respond and very much provided the offense as a whole with a boost, with the juice that they needed. So as I just alluded to, it was a very slow start for this Packers offense, which most instances is going to be a huge no-no against this Detroit Lions team. But, I mean, to the Packers' credit, they were able to fight back. Although being down 10-0, the defense, they held on as much as they could in that first half to allow the offense at least to hang around in that game. And then the start of the second half really couldn't have started out any better for the Packers. A touchdown on their opening drive, interception led to another touchdown. And just like that, they had the lead in that game. So, fortunately, they were able to overcome the slow start, not something they were able to do the first time that these two teams met. But again, you just cannot have that type of first quarter, first half performance against a team of the Lions caliber. It's, you're just putting yourself in such a massive hole that in many instances it's just going to be way too much to overcome, even with all the time that's left in the game. And again, contributing to that slow start, the offense just looked disjointed, is how I would describe it, right? They looked unsettled, a bit uptight, out of rhythm. Things just weren't quite on time within the play. In addition to that, we talked about the offensive line struggles in the Packers being able to get the run game going. The Detroit Lions also did a really good job, especially in that first half, of pressuring Jordan Love. Though that interior defensive line push that I talked about, that rolled over into the passing game as well. And like I said, if you're a defense, you want to wreck the play as quickly as possible, get quick pressure right up the middle. And that's what the Lions were able to do. They also pressured Jordan Love a ton. They sent 15 blitzes in this game, according to Pro Football Focus. And it's not just that they were sending, the linebacker on an A-gap blitz up the middle. I mean, they were mixing and matching. They were throwing stunts. They were blitzing from different parts of the field. They were sending different defenders, right? And it's, and that was a contributing factor in the play, the struggles that the offensive line had in this game. So, I mean, you take a 30,000 foot view, you take a step back of this game, you can see why the Packers had struggles early on, and they were able to find answers to some of that as the game went on. But in the early going, it put them in a big time hole that included 10 plays on their first 3 possessions. I think that was the first possession. They had 5 plays and a punt. Second possession was 3 plays and a punt. Third possession was 2 plays and a fumble by Christian Watson. Jordan Love finished the half with only 31 yards passing through the air, even on the touchdown drive that they had. 10 of those 12 plays on that drive were running plays. Passing game just could not get going. And again, we put it all together. You struggle on the run game, you're in disadvantageous long down and distances. We talked about the benefits of being in second and third and short. Well, if you're in second and third and long, pendulum swings in the other direction. The defense has the advantage now, right? So Packers found themselves, and Josh Myers talked about this after the game, they just couldn't get into a rhythm. Found themselves in too many of those long down and distance situations, and it just puts a huge burden on the passing game that's now one-dimensional. And again, in a 2nd and 10, the defense isn't worried about you running the ball. They're playing the pass and the pass only, so they have the upper hand. So there's a lot that went into those first half struggles that we saw from the Green Bay Packers. Again, disjointed, out of sync, little rhythm, offensive line struggling, pressure on Jordan Love, can't get the run game going. You're in these predictable, obvious passing situations, putting more burden on your passing game that's already struggling to get going. Again, we can add it all up right there. That's not a recipe for success. Now, coming out of halftime, credit, again, like we talked about, credit to the Packers for being able to find answers, for being able to find a way to claw back into this game. And really the catalyst for that was the 59-yard completion to Christian Watson. That just, the floodgates to a degree for the passing game really seemed to open up for them once they got that play. And then like we talked about in the next possession for the Lions, Keyshawn Nixon picks it off. Offense starts with terrific field position. They capitalize on that opportunity with a touchdown. And then on their third touchdown of the game, defense comes up with a big 4th down stop. Again, gave the Packers offense really good field position. There was some nice complementary football components throughout this game where defense came up with a turnover, came up with a 4th down stop, and the offense was able to capitalize on it. And as the offense was finding this rhythm, the success in the second half, like we talked about at the start, it wasn't necessarily the run game that was providing it. It was through the air. It was the passing game. We just talked about the 59-yard completion to Christian Watson. On the third touchdown that the Packers had that half, it was a 21-yard catch and run to Tucker Kraft that put them, I think, inside the 10-yard line, where Josh Jacobs, I believe, was the one who was able to run it in at that point. The passing game provided the spark, provided the juice for this unit. And on the game, Jordan Love finished 12 of 20, 206 yards passing. But in the second half, he was 9 of 13, 175 of those 206 came in the second half, and he averaged a whopping 13.5 yards per attempt. For some context, I believe the league leader in yards per attempt is around 9.5 this season. So 13.5 per attempt, huge. And 4 of Love's 9 completions in that half went for 20-plus yards, were explosive passing plays. The offense really started to find its rhythm. And along with Jordan Love's production, Christian Watson had 114 yards. Dontavian Wicks had probably one of his most steady performances in a number of weeks. Caught 4 or 5 passes for 49 yards. Tucker Kraft had 41 yards receiving, and again, was, as he does, picking up yards after the catch. So spreading the ball around, really steady performance from the passing game, generating explosive plays in this game. And this is a Detroit secondary that is aggressive, right? They're physical. They're not afraid of contact. They'll play up close at the line of scrimmage. They play a ton of man coverage. And that style of play leads to a lot of big plays for this Lions defense. Pass breakups, plays on the ball, interceptions. But if the quarterback has time in the pocket, quarterback of Jordan Love's caliber, the pass catching options that the receivers have, that the Packers have at receiver, tight end, you're now putting a lot of stress on the secondary when you're asking them to go man up over and over and over again against an offense that has those type of playmakers in it. And as the offensive line settled in the second half, as Jordan Love started to have a bit more time in the pocket, those are matchups that more often than not are probably going to favor the Packers, right? You know, Dontavian Wicks, Tucker Kraft, Christian Watson in those one-on-one situations. The Packers are gonna like those matchups for themselves. They're gonna like finding themselves in those situations. And again, when Jordan Love is throwing the ball as well as he is right now. So that was really I think a big part of their success in that second half is the offensive line gave Jordan Love time. They had those one-on-one matchups because, again, the Lions, they're an aggressive defense, which leads to big plays for them, but can lead to some big plays against them. And they found a rhythm, right? Jordan Love had time, was throwing within the rhythm, within the structure of the play. Receivers were able to create that separation, and the Packers offense was able to take advantage of that situation. And Jordan Love, and like we said, Dolphins game, Niners game coming into this one, run game was garnering a lot of the attention, understandably so. But after each of those games, Matt LaFleur spoke very, very highly of the level of play that Jordan Love is at right now. In his ability, his confidence, where he's getting the ball off to. We talked about in a previous episode the importance of him recognizing and taking the checkdowns versus knowing when to push the ball downfield as being a very, very crucial indicator of where his level of play is at. So we're seeing all that from him. And again, he's healthy right now, coming out of the bye week. You can see it in his mobility. You can see it in the play calling with more play action, more under center snaps. So all of that has been pivotal to his success coming out of the bye week versus some of the ups and down performances that we saw from him in the first half of the season. And it really culminated in a second half performance that was, I think what many of us expected from this Packers offense, this passing game for much of the season. Jordan Love had time. They have the playmakers. They took advantage of the one-on-one matchups, and Jordan Love was able to, again, find his receivers, pick up yards after the catch, and the Packers offense was able to find success, shoulder the workload that the running game wasn't necessarily able to do, again, because of the Lions saying, hey, we're going to take this element away. All right, before we wrap up here, well, all that's great, right? Packers offense finding some success, hitting their stride, being the spark for that unit. Ultimately, Green Bay came up short, and at the end of the day, wins, losses, that's what's going to matter most, at least here in the short term. It really comes down to, and I talked about this in the previous video, a handful of plays, especially in back and forth close games like this one. It's a handful of plays that are going to often determine the outcome. And we can really look to the third and fourth down success of each of these offenses in this game as being the difference maker. Green Bay was just 1 of 5 on third downs. Detroit was 7 of 15. They were 4 of 5 on fourth downs. Packers couldn't stay on the field when they needed to. Detroit stayed on the field, and when they did, they turned that into points. And again, it was those handful of plays that were really the big determining factor in the outcome of this game. But having said that, again, that's the short-term view of, all right, here's what happened this past Thursday in this game. Long-term, 4 games remaining in the regular season, playoffs ahead. This Packers offense being the one to provide the juice to pick up the slack for that side of the ball, obviously, goes without saying, really, really promising development for this Packers team moving forward. Again, we talked about the inconsistencies that they had at the start of the season. Jordan Love being healthier now is such a huge, huge factor into the passing game success that we're seeing. Ability to navigate the pocket, escape pressure. Talked about with LaFleur's offense, the importance of going under center, utilizing play action. And Tom Clements, the quarterback's coach, has talked about how a quarterback's accuracy starts in their base, right? Starts in their feet and their legs. That's where the accuracy comes from. And Jordan Love was dealing with the knee injury, the groin injury during the first half of the season. So he's healthier now. Again, that mobility is there, which we're all seeing, but I think that those healthy legs are playing a key part in the accuracy and the throws that we're seeing from him as well. And of course, his decision-making has improved also, checkdowns versus the deep passes. But what's been, like I talked about, what might have been overshadowed in the San Francisco-Miami game is the level that Love's playing at right now for the reasons just mentioned. LaFleur has mentioned it on a few occasions. Really, really impressed by what he's doing. And when the Packers have that ability to play at the level that they're playing at in the passing game against Detroit, and you pair that with Josh Jacobs and the run game and just the potential that's there, That's what puts defenses in a real bind. We always talk about complementary football from the offense, the defense, the special teams. That's complementary football within the offense, right? Within the offensive side of the ball. And that total offensive performance over the 4 quarters where the pass game is rolling, where the run game is rolling, that's the part that we're still really waiting to see come together for this Packers team, at least consistently. Again, this Lions game, the passing game, shouldered the workload. Before that, it was the run game that shouldered the workload. But if they can start to put both of those facets of the game together, this becomes a really, really, really difficult unit to defend. Because if you're a defense and you're game planning, what are you going to take away? Are you going to, load the box to try to limit Josh Jacobs in the run game? I mean, to every decision you make, there's a downside, right? You go heavier in the box, it means you're lighter on the back end. That's man coverage for the Packers passing game if you're not able to get pressure on Jordan Love. Do you give more help on the back end, drop more guys into coverage? That puts you lighter at the line of scrimmage, where now perhaps the Josh Jacobs in the Packers run game has the advantage. That's the real stressor that this Packers offense has the ability to provide. And again, we haven't seen that consistently firing on all cylinders this season. But I think the hope with these recent games, even with the Detroit Lions one ending in a loss, is you can see them progressing in that direction. We've talked about it on here before. Brian Gutekunst talked about it during the bye week. One of the biggest goals for any football team coming into the season is to be playing their best football come December, their best football by January when the playoffs arrive. Yes, you got to win games in September. You got to win games in October to be in a position so those games matter when you're hopefully playing your best football. But you got to be playing your best football at the right time. We saw it last season. Packers were 9-8. They were the 7th seed, but they were operating as one of the best offenses in teams in general in football during that stretch of the season. And then we see them go on that run in the playoffs and in those last few weeks of the season. So playing your best football at the end of the year is the ultimate goal. And by no means am I saying Green Bay's there. They've arrived. They're doing it. Again, they're coming off of a loss. They're a very good team. The Lions are a better team right now. But over these last few weeks, you see the run game working here and there. You see the passing game picking up in this last game. You can see how it can all start to come together, where in these final 4 games, if they can build upon that performance, again, that's the key, right? Building upon what you just established. If they are able to build upon that, you can see how this can be a team that come late December, January, is really starting to fire on all cylinders. And again, that's going to be the ultimate goal for the Packers. So I appreciate you tuning in. As always, if you've made it this far, might as well hit like, might as well hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. Follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. Read all my work over at ESPNLacrosse.com, and you can download 105.5 ESPN Lacrosse app for all your Wisconsin sports radio needs. So until next time, friends, take care.